Welcome, everybody. Welcome to, is this our third or fourth meeting? I can't remember. Anyway, we appreciate everybody being here. Before we get to the agenda, I warned the mayor about this. I wanted to ask him to clarify something for us. There was a vote on Monday night of the city commission giving the Fargo Dome permission to bid on this, but I got a couple calls from people in the public who either didn't read it closely or misunderstood and said to me, oh, it is going to be built at the Fargo Dome then. And I'm like, they're going to get to bid, but no decisions have been made, right, Mayor?
So basically, legally, when we checked into it, Mike had asked to check into it with legal. We found that if the Fargo Dome wants to do an RFQ or RFP, they have to have permission from the commission to do that, because then they are becoming like a developer or anybody else. They're competing for that space. They go under the same rules this committee would have, is they have to qualify, and then they have to have a project, and we have to judge it if it's worthy of choosing it. But everybody's on equal space. It's just that they needed our permission if they spend any money in developing their RFP, that the city commission gave them permission to go ahead. That does not state that that's our selected site. That just states that they're in the mix and can compete. So.
Right. So they had to get permission from the city to take part in the process.
So they got a permission slip. They're in it just like anybody else, so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for helping out with that. I appreciate it. Okay, so we should probably do quick introductions, I guess. I'm Charlie Johnson. I'm President and CEO of Visit Fargo Moorhead, otherwise known as the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Mallory Ackerman, Director of Convention Sales at Visit Fargo Moorhead.
Emma McIntyre, Manager of Development at Folkways.
Kate Ballstead, Events and Marketing Specialist for the Southeast Education Cooperative.
Tim Mahoney, Mayor of Fargo.
Denise Kolpak, Fargo City Commission.
Joe Race with the Greater Fargo Moorhead EDC. Kent Kolstedt, President Livewire.
Michael Rethinger, City Administrator, Fargo.
Claire Hughes, GM of the Clubhouse Hotel and Suites, Fargo.
And online, we will introduce our three guests in a moment, but Shannon is here. Shannon?
Yep, Shannon Full, President of the Fargo Moorhead West Fargo Chamber. Sorry I couldn't be there in person.
Okay. We appreciate you signing in. Thank you. Okay, so we want to talk. Last week we had a discussion with some local planners, event planners, which I thought was very helpful, and we've heard some more afterwards, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that going forward. But today we've invited three folks who are from Bismarck. Everybody's in Bismarck, right? Okay, and they do event planning for their groups. Two of them are near and dear to my heart because they represent groups whose meetings we have not been able to hold in our current configurations, the Association of Counties and the League of Cities. And then we also have someone from the North Dakota Emergency Medical Services Association who can tell us about what they need to have meetings here. So Mallory, do you want to introduce them? You set this up, so I'm going to let you do that.
You bet. So even though Charlie said two of you are near and dear to his heart, you all are near and dear to our hearts. Okay, so first, Jenny Dietzman from the North Dakota Association of Counties. I'm not sure, Jenny, are you online? Can you hear us? Perfect. Carissa Richard with the North Dakota League of Cities, and Cheryl Flick with the North Dakota Emergency Medical Services Association. So glad that the three of you can join us today. As I had mentioned in the introduction to what we want to discuss in today's meeting is just to hear from you about what your annual convention specifically will need for meeting space, vendors that we can provide or accommodate in this new convention center, or any other tidbits or suggestions or recommendations you may make for us would be very helpful.
So do you want to pick someone to start?
Sure. Jenny, why don't you start?
So for those of you who may not know what our membership is, we obviously represent the 53 counties across the state of North Dakota, and our annual conference encompasses all elected and appointed officials. We average probably around 400 attendees for our annual conference. It's a 2.5 day, we'll say, convention. We start on Sunday afternoon, go all day Monday, and then finish at about 2 o'clock on Tuesday. We have around 100 vendors. Some of those are also large equipment displays, so our exhibit space needs are fairly large, not crazy, but definitely would want to be able to fit at least, I would say, 85 or so 10 by 10 booths. And then we do on an average between 6 and 8 large equipment displays. And that's bringing in, you know, anything from trucks to road graders to the big toys, if you will. We do also have a large general session room that we like to use that can hold up to at least 400, probably closer to 500 people. We also do 4 concurrent training sessions during our events throughout the days. So just making sure that there would be enough breakout session space. And then one of our big things that we do like to have, and it just, I suppose, depends on location, but hotels, obviously, that are near to the event center. And even if there would be a host hotel connected to the event center, that would be a premier advantage, I think, to our exhibit or to our conference space. So, but that's just kind of a summary in a nutshell, what we have as far as needs for our event.
Jenny, could you tell us a little bit more about the larger exhibits? Are you talking about exhibits that need to be outside, or are there larger exhibits that you need to accommodate inside as well?
That's a great question, Charlie. You know, because our conference is held in October and we live in this beautiful state of North Dakota, we never know if we're going to be in 16 inches of snow or if it's going to be 60 degrees outside. So we do plan to have, we do have all of our exhibit space, including our large equipment, indoor.
Okay, and this might be more specific than you can answer at the moment, but maybe it's not, because I know you know your business. So those large exhibit space, large exhibits, so you said, I think you said 6 to 8 of them, maybe up to 10. How much square footage do you generally need for each of those? I suppose it varies, but maybe overall?
Sure. I would say that currently where we're at the event center here in Bismarck, their spaces are 20 by 40, which is a little cozy. It would be great if we could maybe expand that a little bit more, but currently it's 20 by 40 for each of those spaces. And then obviously a little bit of wiggle room to walk through and the like.
Okay, so you need at least 800 square feet for each of those 6 to 8 things. That's helpful. Thank you. Does anybody else have questions for Jenny? We can certainly keep coming back to everybody after we've heard from everyone. Okay.
All right, thanks, Jenny. Carissa, is there anything else that you'd like to add to the discussion?
Yes, our event would be structured very similar to the Association of Counties event. The only difference I would say at this point is that we have 5 concurrent sessions going on at the same time. So we would need 1 additional room there. And then we also have a social at the venue one evening, and we like to have that in a space that's different than where we're holding our general sessions. So we'd need room for that as well. And that's probably the only differences from the association event.
So is your attendance about the same? Jenny was talking about 400 people, never mind the exhibits. And also maybe, Jenny, if you could chime in too, when you say 400, does that include the vendors? Because they are obviously our delegates too.
That does not include the vendors, Charlie. We usually have around 400 attendees. And then in addition to that, with exhibits, we probably have about another 150 to 200. So total for our event could be anywhere between 650 and 700.
Okay, that helps. Thank you. Okay, Carissa, back to you.
As far as socials go, and Carissa, I appreciate you bringing that up. We don't usually do a separate social space. We do our social within the exhibit hall, just because we coincide that with our vendor networking. So just making sure too within that space to allow room for a couple of bars, as well as some, maybe high top tables and some areas for networking in that arena as well.
Okay, thank you. That was still Jenny, right? Okay, so Carissa, back to you. How about, so how many attendees do you have? Plus, and vendors too.
Right, so we generally have about 250 city representatives and then 150 in vendors. So our largest meal service would be close to 400. So that would be what we'd set for the general session space.
Okay, and then remind me again, how many exhibitors do you usually have? Did you say it's about the same as the counties?
We have fewer. We would have 70 booths approximately, and then somewhere around 5 or 6 large equipment vendors.
And what time of year does your event take place?
We're in September, usually the 3rd week, and we are Wednesday through Friday.
Okay, and then, so for those large exhibits, you'd like to have those inside too, though, or do any of them?
We would like to have them inside, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, Cheryl, can you share a little bit about your annual conference?
Yeah, our annual conference is held the first week of April. So we try to have everything inside because of the wonderful North Dakota weather. We represent all the ambulance services in North Dakota. So all our participants are from all over the state. We have some from Canada, Montana, and South Dakota that attend. We have approximately 900 people on site. That includes participants, vendors, board of directors, speakers, and other people that come into our event. We run our event Thursday, so we move in on Wednesday and then we move out Saturday night. We too have the big displays, which this year, for the first time, we're finding out one of them we can't even get in the doors. So please plan on big high doors for your new center. Another thing we have is we have our awards. It used to be a banquet, but now it's an awards event. And we have that off-site just because we like a nicer venue per se, but we would love to have that on-site if there would be a way to accommodate that. We have 5 breakout sessions and a general session. So those are some of our needs. And I think that's about it, other than what they've already said about the event center in Bismarck.
Cheryl, when you reference restrictions on height and space being able or getting things into the convention center, can you give us a specific number as to, you know, how high or how wide that would need to be to get ambulances and fire trucks and all of that in?
Sure. Right now, their height of their door is 13 feet 5 inches, and the truck that wants to come in is 13 feet 6 inches. So, and that's probably the best example I can give you, but I know we've found even locally with ambulances, they're getting higher and wider, kind of like pickup trucks everybody has, don't fit into the old garages anymore. So, yeah, that's the bigger, the higher and the wider, because everything just keeps getting bigger anyway.
All right, thank you. How about for your total number of exhibitors? Do you also have around that 70 to 85?
Right. We have right around 70, and then we do use an extra hall just for, like, this year we're putting in a big mobile hospital, and we have a sim truck that comes in, a big semi that comes in. So we have probably 70 in the main event, in the main vendor hall, and then some of the bigger ones in the next hall over. So altogether, we have 2 vendor halls combined.
Is it the hope to maybe have those all in one? Or you want them to be
well,
separate?
they kind of are in one. It's just the wall that opens up.
I see. Okay.
But we are billed, for Hall A, Hall B, and Hall C.
Okay, to give us a better idea, Cheryl, then, so when you're working at the Bismarck Event Center, so they have like 100,000 square foot exhibit hall, I believe, so that accommodates, do you divide the halls? Are they all in that big exhibit hall, but you divide it for the larger vendors versus the smaller ones?
No, we keep the wall open, so it's all one big room.
Okay.
But we could, if we didn't have those 2 big exhibits coming in, then we would not be using that hall.
Okay. And so do you fill up the entire 100,000 square feet?
We don't fill it up, but we spread out and make it look like we do.
Okay, just checking.
Hey, Charlie, I have a question for all 3.
Yeah,
if I could
Denise.
follow up. We had some examples of what would be nice to haves at our last meeting from other folks who joined us. Can you share, is there something that you've really always wanted that is not available in the venues you're using today that would be nice to have?
I can speak to that one. The internet needs to be reliable. I think with the event center, that's older and added on to, and they've improved, but that could be better. One thing we're finding is everybody wants water stations, the built-in water stations, instead of the big jugs that you have to constantly refill. It's little things like that that really make your event stand out.
Thank you.
This is Jenny from the Association of Counties. A couple of things. One was going to be internet service. Cheryl, I completely agree with you on that. The second that I wish the event center would be able to provide is, so there's not a full service kitchen within the event center. And so when we do our large banquet, we always cater that, which is a bit pricey because there's, in addition to the fees you pay for catering to come in, there's also an added fee by the event center to bring in outside caterers. So it would be nice to be able to utilize a catering service within that event. And this might be a big stretch, but having a larger hotel attached to the event center would be a plus. Kind of similar when I have another event I do at the Alaris Center in Grand Forks, and the CANAD is attached to that, and it works out really, really nice. But so those would be a couple from our perspective.
Thank you.
Jenny, about the hotel, so what is a large hotel to you? How many rooms would you be looking for?
Well, currently for our membership, I think have four or five hotels that we work with. But even if there's a hotel with 200 rooms, that would be great.
Okay, thanks.
And I would agree with the hotel part. You can use that hotel as your conference headquarters, and the membership would fill up your other hotels, but it would really be nice to have a nice, close hotel as a conference headquarters. And I 100% agree with her too on the catering. We have 1 hour to get our people fed, and it's been the biggest complaint for the last 30 years about catering.
When you're in Bismarck, what is the hotel? Because you don't really have a hotel on site, so how do you manage that one?
For the League of Cities, we provide busing to the conference hotels.
Okay.
And we actually used to do busing, but there are a number of hotels that a number of our members weren't crazy staying at, if I can just be completely transparent. And so we actually no longer provided busing service this last conference, and it actually went over better than we had anticipated. But we do have agreements with a lot of neighboring hotels for our events.
So parking is an issue for you too. I mean, most of your attendees drive in, right? Other than some of the vendors.
That is correct. But the event center in Bismarck actually has pretty decent parking. I mean, there's a bit of a walking distance for some, but we haven't had complaints about not having parking. So I don't know, I can't speak on behalf of the other entities, but that hasn't been an issue for us.
Okay.
And it might be just the time of year when we have our event, but we have been on the same weekend as the Shrine Circus, so then we do have to fight for parking.
Okay, we're making a note of that. Okay, I had another question in my head. Who else has questions? We had a whole meeting about, most of a whole meeting about catering kitchens. We brought some caterers in, and we think we have a handle on how big that needs to be for you. But we're thinking the caterers we dealt with in our meeting a couple weeks ago talked about 9,000 to as much as 15 or 16,000 square feet for catering. And they were thinking in terms of we had, God forbid, several thousand people at this facility at one time. So I think we're going to definitely try to address the catering or prep kitchen issue. Mayor?
When you guys talked about issues with catering, Was it the quality of the food, or was it hot, or they didn't like what was served, or, because I remember that YWCA had an event and they had lasagna that went over fairly well because it was okay warm and reasonable taste to it. But is it what they're serving, or is it's not good, nice and warm and to the plate?
Inspector, this is Jenny, with the Association of Counties. We do a banquet on one of our evenings, and the event center only has paper products for their dinnerware, and so you can't have regular plates or regular silverware. And their menu, and again, understand where they're coming from because they don't have a full service kitchen, but their menu options are very limited, just based on what they have for the services that they can provide. And so particularly for our event, they're not able to cater a banquet meal. And so we have to outsource that.
Jenny,
Okay.
thank you for pointing that out too. How important is sustainability for the three of you when it comes to, paper products versus having kitchenware that's already on site, or recycling, and all of those options for a facility to have? How important is sustainability?
Speechless.
Anyone?
When you're talking about sustainability, Mallory, do you mean like being environmentally conscious?
Yeah, yes.
I mean, obviously the less of a footprint, we can include, the better, but do we promote it, or have that as a focal point? At this time, we don't. But we would definitely be open to, if there's alternatives, to have that discussion.
So if you guys had your choice, would you, it sounds to me like you'd like to be able to have silverware and actual plates and serve it like a sit-down dinner, correct?
For our Monday evening event, yes. For our breakfasts and lunches, I think that it's kind of just been accepted that it's okay to have, paper plates and plastic silverware. But for our banquet, we would prefer to have full dinnerware sets. And again, if Carissa or Cheryl have any other comments, I would welcome them too.
This is Carissa. I would agree that we would prefer to be using dinnerware for all of our meals if we can. It just kind of elevates the feeling of the service and what the quality of what you're getting. So that would be our preference.
Okay.
And this is Cheryl. I would agree, or even if it was optional, we wouldn't mind paying a little more maybe for something like that. And again, with the water stations versus, throwing away how many water bottles every time, that's something we've looked at. We've put up recycling bins for all our paper product or paper from the office, so we've done little things like that. But if there's something we could incorporate with you on your end, that would be wonderful.
Commissioner, you had a question?
I do, and we have Livewire here, but we didn't really talk about any AV needs. If you want to just touch a little bit on that, on something that has been either a frustration or something you wished you had more of or had at all?
This is Jenny again. We use Livewire, so we're really happy with their services and what they do. And I'll take my payment after the meeting. I'm just kidding. No, I will say though, there are definitely some dead spots within one of the main halls that we utilize with the event center, but I would probably lean more on their expertise because, when they're hanging rigs and doing all of the things, they probably know better than any of us on what their needs are and if those are being met at the event center. But from our perspective, we've been very happy with Livewire services for our event.
Great.
Thank you.
Anyone else have comments on that? Other than to, thank Livewire?
Just to touch on that quickly. I mean, I tend to agree with that statement. I mean, overall, the event center is one that we've used. The Bismarck Event Center has been one we've had an example on many times at this meeting. It's come up every time for that matter. Great rigging, great power, great capabilities in that way for us or anybody else from AV services, the AV service industry to bring in whatever they need to do the event successfully. So it's a really great example in that way for sure.
Okay, other questions?
I do have a question regarding the sites that you're at now. So I know that you had mentioned parking as a benefit for the locations that you're currently at. Are there positives or any negatives? You wish there were more restaurants. We talked about proximity to hotels, maybe public transit. If you could talk about that a bit.
Don't all talk at once. Anyway, would you like us to call on you? Jenny, do you have any comment on that?
I feel like I'm always going first, so I thought I would take a back seat to see if someone else would go. But I would, and again, this isn't a detriment to our capital city, but I do wish that there would be a little more investment in some of our surrounding hotels. I do feel like they're definitely aged. And could have some type of I would say remodel or reconstruction on a few of our hotels, which is one of the reasons why we stopped busing, because we did have a number of our members that weren't even in our hotel block that selected other choices just because that they were newer, even though the commute was longer. So it would be nice. There is a number of restaurants in the area of the event center, at least enough for our group that they feel they can go out. And Bismarck isn't so big that, if you get in a vehicle, you're really 10 minutes from anywhere. So from that standpoint, it's not an issue, but I do wish that there would be maybe some updates to some of the larger hotels in the area.
And I would 100% agree with that. We had to switch our conference headquarters hotel because I got just tired of all the complaints and the filthiness, and I was embarrassed to take out of state speakers there. It would be nice if in the future, if you're doing a hotel with this, to make some nice rooms, to make some suites. So when we do bring in special people, we can have them treated a little more special. Like she said, within Bismarck, there's walking distance to everything, but we've even tried to get them to have coupons for our members, to come to Hardee's, and we just got zero buy-in from any of that. It would be nice, if they would promote our event as much as we are filling up their facilities.
A follow-up question. This came up last week in a conversation with the Chamber. They provided some great feedback on a holding site for events. I know that the Chamber does generally day-long events. Conferences last over a span of few days. Could you provide maybe what a dream space would look like for your team for a holding space, either in square footage or what you believe the purpose of that room could potentially serve?
This is Carissa. We do use, we call it an office or a headquarters for a conference. We use it for prepping for registration and things like that. We use it for storage. We use it to prep speakers and get them organized, or as a space for them to wait before they do their presentations. And it really is good for us to have that space close to where we're holding registration so that we have access to our supplies and things like that.
That's a great note on location.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just commenting. That's a great note on location. Thank you for sharing that.
I think another thing that's important for our group when we have a place for staff is a lot of our organizations have regional caucus meetings, and we may be discussing resolutions that we need a space to, use our computers. We may need to print something off, with some amendments to things. So being able to have good internet connection, as well as, plugins for printers and those types of things. And, if pie in the sky kind of thinking, it is nice to have an area to be able to just sit, and maybe not in a folding chair, something a little bit more comfortable. We do have a small fridge in our current break room, so we, host it with drinks and, maybe some snacks in case, sometimes you're running and don't have an opportunity to grab lunch. So it's nice to have kind of an area to just kind of sit and take 10 minutes to do those types of things. But one of the things that's also nice that we utilize quite a bit at the event center, they call it their green room. But similar to what Carissa was saying, there is a room off the main general session space that's really for your speakers and entertainment who may be coming in. That also would be a nice room, particularly for those that are maybe your keynotes, your entertainment, that they have a space to sit, maybe can have their meals catered in there before they perform or whatever the case is. That is a room that we do use quite a bit at the event center for our speakers and entertainment.
I know the Civic Center is what comes to mind in my head. The back holding space for that area has amenities like a shower, sinks, bathrooms. Are there like specs that maybe you can include that would be nice to have in a speaker holding space?
I know in the speaker holding space that's in that room, I don't remember if there's a restroom in there or not. Because they can go in the back way, but it's probably not convenient. So yeah, I would say if there's an area large enough where if they can, have a table to eat meals, maybe a couple of sofas to sit down in. It's also nice to have a speaker in the room. So when things are happening in the large general session room, they can hear what is going on in that prep room. So if they know they're wrapping up in 10 minutes, they're like, okay, I'm going on in 10 minutes or less. Because normally we're opening the door, trying to hear, and then, letting them know what's going on. So that might be a really nice add-on for those that are in that room waiting to present.
Kent, is that a hard thing to set up? Audio into a green room or holding room?
No, not at all. And that's something we would pretty commonly bring in, just what we would call a delay TV or speaker or audio system in a space like that. The VIP room out at Bismarck Event Center does have, to answer the question on restroom, does have a shower, and does have some soft seating, high top, that sort of thing. So it's got room for maybe 10-ish people, something like that. It's not terribly large. Back to the what I would call, in a different term, the war room, if you will, for event planners, right? We, are at different convention centers and event spaces all the time, and it's very uncommon to find office space for the event planner, for the event producer, that type of thing, right? And to everybody's points here, all totally valid. There's really no place to just sit down and work on the show, if that makes sense. Not so much for our part as a production company, but for the planner's part. It can be tricky to find a spot to just hunker down and run the show, so.
Okay, other questions? Oh, should we ask this one?
Go for it.
We didn't ask this of a group last week, but it's obviously more pertinent for people from out of town. And again, this is just an informal poll, and we anticipate getting multiple proposals and location proposals for this facility. So just in generic terms, how do you guys feel about locations? What do you like to have around? If you could pick an ideal place and you all know Fargo, so if you could pick an ideal place or places, do you have any particular preferences? We're not going to decide based on what you say. We're just kind of curious. We got a long way to go to get through this, and we don't even know what's going to be proposed yet, but we think there will be multiple options to choose from. So, this is a free question for you. Do you have any particular places you think your attendees would like to be? Close, anyway. I want to call on you. I'm going to start with Carissa. Sorry.
So I would say our attendees tend to kind of make a trip out of coming to our event. So many of them will come a day early or stay for the weekend. So from that perspective, they'd love to be able to stay in the same hotel and be close to shopping and restaurants and things that they can go to after our event. And on the flip side of that, though, easily accessible if they're driving in. So that would also be a priority for them.
Okay, thank you. That'll certainly be one of our criteria.
Well, we think all of Fargo was easily accessible, but I'm going to push you a little on that. So, okay, if you're to Fargo Dome, that's one event area, but you're not near your hotel frequently and have to travel. So if I'm by West Acres and the Holiday Inn, is that a better idea than being at the Fargo Dome at the Holiday Inn? Do people like be closer to the shopping or closer to the event?
Yeah, I would say we'd have people on both sides of that. So if they're going to stay and be there extra time, I'd say they'd rather be close to the shopping.
I'm sorry, that was still Carissa, right?
Yep.
Okay. Cheryl, what about you? Do you have any thoughts on this? Provocative question?
Well, just in the other conferences I've gone to too, it's nice. Some people will drive in and never get in their car until they go home. So they like everything within walking distance, from shopping to restaurants. And then other people don't hesitate to jump in their car and drive across town. So I think it's a mix. I personally, if I can avoid downtown, I would, because I just like, the outskirts, but that's just my thought. And I don't get to Fargo that much, and that town changes every time I go there. So I lived there when the Blue Cross Blue Shield building was out by itself. So
Yeah, I remember that too.
Get her into town more often. There's so much.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to arrange, once we have a place, we're going to arrange site visits.
Tour of the restaurants, the tour of the places we have. Charlie, you got to get her back into town. So when I was in Boston, they have a convention center offsite, not in the mix of everything. And it appears very much when they do their conventions that you stay around town and either rely on Uber or something else to get to the convention. Not a lot of parking on site at that particular event area. My curiosity is, negating just Fargo, Bismarck, Grand Forks, those types of events. When you go and travel, is it more important to have the place close to your eating or to the convention? Or shopping too.
Yeah. Well, let's let Jenny weigh in, and then we'll see if anybody else has any other thoughts. Jenny? Uh-oh, did we lose her? There you are.
Can you hear me?
Jenny?
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you guys could hear me. Again, just ease of being able to get to the destination, I think, is important for our members. I agree. We kind of have a mixed bag as well of those that like to shop and those who would rather just park their vehicle and stay. But now that we are at the event center where most people are driving anyway, I don't know if that would be as big of an issue for us. Because, people don't, ultimately it would be great if there would be some restaurants and different things around the convention center area, but I don't think plunking it in the middle of like a downtown area would be necessary for our group. I think ease of getting in and out from that standpoint would be important. And we do have vendors, just as an FYI too, and I don't know what your Sundays are like for events or restaurants being open, but we do have, like our large equipment vendors and some of our engineering groups that will host off-site events as well. So that's important to have options. And I know Fargo has a ton of different options, which I appreciate the CVB working with on those types of things too, is helping our our vendors when we're not having, we just do a social on Sunday evening and then it's dinner on your own. A lot of our vendors take advantage of wining and dining our members. So having something in a near vicinity, but maybe not necessarily walking distance.
All right. Any last minute must say things before we let you ladies go? We really appreciate your time and for giving us all the insights as to what you'd like out of a convention center. So
Hang on, Emma had her finger on the button, so maybe she has another question.
I was just going to mention walkability versus accessibility, because walkability, I believe, is one thing, whereas accessibility is another. So maybe mentioning more clearly how important walkability specifically is, because I believe, as Mayor Mahoney said, Fargo is a very accessible place, but walkability is a different type of question. And maybe you touched on parts of it, but if we could just address it directly.
For us, I think accessibility is probably more important than walkability. I think once you're in the event center, if, walkability from that standpoint, I think is important, that you're not going down, hallways and, not making it a maze, if you will. I think that's important. But as far as a destination place and having to drive to other areas, for us, I think that would be okay as long as it's easy to maneuver in the area where that destination would be.
Okay, thank you. And and we appreciate the shout out. We help we're always willing to help now or in the future, wherever we're putting meetings. We always try to help find places for off-site events. So if there are no other questions, we'll probably let our three meeting planners go. Thank you very much, all three of you, Jenny, Carissa, and Cheryl. We appreciate it. Oh, Emma has one more question.
Sorry. So you had mentioned offsites. Maybe in the site selection itself, interesting to know just kind of like what you're looking for in an offsite in regards to these kinds of spaces you're hosting. You said you want them to be a little bit more upscale. Maybe some specific definitions that come to mind.
Sure. I do know that we've had a couple of our vendors actually reserve meeting rooms in other hotels to provide like a heavy hors d'oeuvre and open bar for some of their members. We've had others that have rented or reserved, like let's just say the Broadway Grill is one of the restaurants here in Bismarck that they've reserved a room for, 30 people. So it could be restaurants, it could be other hotels where they've set up a separate like event for our members or for their customers, I guess would probably be an easier way to define that. So they've used other hotels, they've used other restaurants within the area. So I would say it's kind of a combination of either of those. And again, want to say thank you for allowing us to be able to provide input on this. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all. We appreciate it, and we may come back to you with more questions down the road as we get closer. But we really appreciate you spending part of your Friday afternoon with us. We know it's Friday, so thank you very much, and we appreciate everything. I just want, Shannon, I assume if you had a question, you would have popped in, right? So, yeah? Okay. I worry, sometimes you lose track of people who have called in. I don't want to miss out.
Nope, I'm all good. I'm listening intently.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's what we were really checking on. Okay. All right, ladies, thank you very much for being with us. And like I said, we will probably be in touch in the future. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you
so much.
Okay, well, we have a little ways to go yet, but we want to be done at 2, respectful of everyone's time. So we talked a little bit about RFP requirements. The sheet that I handed out actually came from our friends at HVS. We've tried to put together our own list of selection criteria. Mallory and I came up with a list, but then I thought, I think I'm going to call our friends at HVS and see what they have. And pretty much everything we thought of is on this list. So, and then some more. So Just wanted to show this to you, go over it a little bit quickly today. Obviously, we'll be working more on this as we get farther down the road. But they also, they have a weighting system, which actually at some point, when we get deeper into this, I might ask Tom from HVS to join us and explain how they use it. Not that we have to do it exactly the way they do, but they have a lot of experience with this thing. So they break it into 4 categories: site considerations, urban, includes like development around it, potential, access, ease of access, which came up a lot in today's discussion, and then finance, which includes more of the nitty-gritty things like land assembly costs. We already know that we have city funding, but we've talked a little bit about other incentives that might come along later, depending on the proposal that gets selected. Cost of construction, potential for private investment around it, opportunity costs, alternative land uses, that kind of thing is in that category. Site considerations, capacity for recommended building program, that is, can it take what we want to build? District height restrictions, heritage district design restrictions, which may or may not come up depending on what people pitch. The ability to assemble the site. I'm not sure I completely understand that concept, so we'll get more info from them on that. Proximity to, they say proximate, but existing and planned lodging, which obviously we heard a lot from. Our friends in Bismarck told us, I think, how important it is to have an attached hotel. And they maybe we need to go on our higher end to about 200 rooms, at least 180 to 200. And then, retail dining amenities, all these things that came up in these proximity to demand generators. I'm saying proximity instead of proximate. To demand generators, I'm not entirely certain what they mean by that, but I think we'll get more clarification from them on that. And then, of course, the city will know if there's infrastructure wherever it is already in place. I'm sure wherever it is, no matter what infrastructure is in place, there'll have to be some adjustments to it. Existing zoning, neighborhood safety, and then, of course, the ease of access for drive-in and pedestrians, service vehicles, parking, public transportation, and potential for traffic congestion. So those are the kind of things we're going to be looking at. Anybody have any questions about any of that right now? Joe?
Yeah, Charlie, I think, just this conversation we heard, I think it might be really important for us to get a sense of the user of this facility, especially as it breaks out by maybe the percentage based on history or your track record of not being able to bid, like looking at all of that together, because, and I'm going to, like Aldeveron, offices in Boston, Texas, Madison, coming to Fargo and bringing a team of people here for a conference, their identification or thinking about access, amenities, walkability might be different than a state county's conference users. And I think it'd be important for us to understand kind of the weighting of how we see this facility being utilized. I think could have a weighting for us as we're thinking about each of these factors that we'll go into in a little bit more detail.
So you say we should get some input from, outside the region, people who do
Well, I'm
the same
saying
thing?
that if we project that 80% of these conferences users are going to be, they're going to see Fargo as the big city. That might change your mind on where you want to locate this because of what that end user is going to want to see.
Mm-hmm.
I moved here 7 years ago and I have a relative who couldn't believe I lived 37 South and how was I going to get to work in downtown?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, there's like 20 different ways to get there. But so the point I think I'm trying to make here is who's going to use this the most and then what are their needs versus if somebody's thinking, well, we're going to have corporations use this a lot. And Boston, as the mayor said, right, no big deal that I'm taking Ubers and that I'm traveling 20 minutes to restaurants or that I like walkability if I'm, I'm downtown Chicago. I just think getting a mix of what you guys see as potential users and we can talk about might change the weighting of even some of these categories within.
Well, that's one of the things I think we can count on HVS for when the study that they're doing for us will, if I'm understanding what you're saying, will help us. They'll give us at least an estimate from their research of how many meetings will be, like from North Dakota or perhaps Minnesota, but how many will be out farther. That's kind of their bread and butter. We've seen them do that before in previous studies. It's not going to be 100% accurate. Nothing is 100% accurate. But hopefully we're going to get some help from them, and we can certainly arrange sessions with them to talk about that. But then we can see, we'll ask them that question and see if we can get a little preliminary info too, even before their study is done. That'd be helpful. And we could also, I know Mallory could identify 2 or 4 planners from outside the region if we wanted to invite them to come and have a meeting like this with them. That might not be a bad idea to talk about if they have a different view than people who live closer to here. Certainly, Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo is the biggest metro area in this part of the country between Minneapolis and Spokane, probably. So we understand that people around the immediate area here think of it differently in terms of how big a city it is, but other people from outside the region would say, well, it's not that big a place, but it's a fun place to go. I mean, we get that all the time. So we could perhaps do that. Yeah. Yeah. Good questions. Okay. We might be able to knock off a few minutes early. Mayor, yes? Or not. The mayor wants to talk.
Well, I don't think district height restriction is a big issue for us unless we live out right underneath the airport, right, Mike? I mean, even if it was at the Fargo Dome area, the height restriction shouldn't be a real issue, just on these parameters we have. And Charlie, the only other thing I'd like on finance, I think Susan would like, is what's it going to cost a year, right? I mean, you're hoping it'll bring revenue. Other people are hoping it'll bring loss, but let's say one proposal is $1 million a year it's going to cost us, another one is 500, that should weigh for something, right? Yeah. And Charlie, I think you have one that pays us $2 million a year. I'm pretty much hoping for that, but it pays $200 million or $2 million a year for us to help us carry costs. I was hoping, but.
Did I say a number? I'm not sure, but.
No, but I'm just saying as part of the criteria, I think as a group, we would want to look at what is the carrying cost of this project.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, this was interesting listening to different vendors that want to come in here, what happens and catering pays. I think we've talked about, Ken, right? If you have catering, that can increase the viability of it or whatever. But just if they're weighing it, I would like them to weigh the carrying cost of after 20 years, what it's going to cost to run this place.
Absolutely. And we will have them come to a meeting when we get.
With points.
Yeah, and we can discuss with them, because I'm sure they adjust this depending on who they're working with, for sure. Yeah. Okay.
And then Charlie, I'm assuming when you say land assembly costs, that means how much it would cost us if we had to purchase the land where it goes, right?
Right. Yeah. If I understand, you're asking, like, does the cost include the land? That kind of, yeah, that's going to be part of the RFP
Mike will tell you,
question.
when we did Block 9, that was a bizarre deal where the city had some parking lot and the bank had some areas, and it was kind of a conglomeration of a variety of different entities that made that happen. But ultimately, it worked out, right? It worked for betterment of everybody. But, that's a lesson to me, because then as we went forward, the park board realized how much it costs to run Broadway Square. And so it's just that realization of there's carrying cost to what you do, what it costs to assemble, and then what it costs to run the project.
Okay. Yeah, we'll address all those issues for sure. I might be a simpleton or naive when it comes to this kind of thing, but I think we'll get interesting projections on how the land works into this and how that would be paid for too. But yes, we'll discuss it. Okay, last thing before we go, we will send you an itinerary next week for our trip on the 24th and 25th, right? 24th and 25th of March. Short version is we're going to meet in our parking lot at our visitor center and be on the bus by 8:30. The bus is engaged. We've got it. And there'll be plenty of room because we so far, we think there'll only be about maybe 15 people. We haven't heard if any media want to come with, but if anybody's listening, let us know if you do. Our goal is to be in St. Cloud by about 11 so we can have lunch and then meet at the river's edge by 12:30 with our hosts, including a tour of that place and then a meeting with the manager of that place and our counterparts in St. Cloud. We'll stay there till about 3, I think we figured, and then we'll go off to Rochester. Mallory has already, good thing I have someone like Mallory who loves itineraries, and she's already booked dinner for us in Rochester at a restaurant at the hotel. We're going to stay at a hotel called the Hotel Indigo, and then it's pretty close to the Civic Center. Yes, could be walked if we wanted to, and then we'll be at the Mayo Civic Center by 8:30 the next morning, and hopefully out of there by, in time to get lunch in the Twin Cities on the way back. So hopefully we'll be back by 5 or 6 o'clock on Tuesday. Yeah, dress comfortably. We don't have to dress up for this. So business, casual, or even a little more casual, would be good. Yeah, comfortable shoes. We'll be walking around event centers.
And then on the buses, is Shannon Full going to tell stories or something about the chamber? Or is Joe going to tell us some stories, history of the world or anything
Everyone
like that?
has to share their favorite joke.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's all up to Joe because unfortunately I have to be back for an event, so I will be driving separately, so I don't get the bus time. Sorry, team. So, Joe, it's all your stories.
I can help him. Okay, if there's no other business for the good of the order, we are right at 1:59. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week, and we'll get you an agenda for that one, too. Thank you.